What is up, wrestling fans? Welcome to another Pay-Per-Viewpoint post-show edition of the Smark Smack Talk podcast. We are talking about AEW Full Gear 2023. Pay-Per-View just ended a few moments ago, and we are going to be running down exactly what happened on the card, our thoughts on what happened, predictions of where this might go in the future, and everything else that we feel like talking about. I'm your host, as always, Tony Mango. Joining me, as always, is Callum Wiggins.
Hey there.
So before we get to, list by list, match by match type on here, how are you feeling about this pay-per-view, generally speaking?
I thought it was a really, really good show until about 11:30 hit, or whatever time it was. I don't know what time it was for you guys, but whatever. Essentially, it was a great show, and then the main event happened, and then yeah.
I got a little bit of issue with that. I did really enjoy this pay-per-view, actually more than I thought that I was going to. I really was not feeling in the mood to watch it today. Just not in a good mood in general. But I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be doing this for 5.5, 6 hours. And, there were matches that we were talking about on the pre-show, the predictions, of things that I just want super duper into. Some things that I was interested in that I thought was like, well, it's going to be a good match, but I don't really necessarily care or whatever. But I ended up actually enjoying this more than I thought that I would. And that's going to come out through, match by match when we're talking about some of these things here. But as we do that, we want to know what you have to say as well. So I see that Brandon is in the live chat. What's up, Brandon? And anybody else who pops up in the meantime, then by all means, chat it up. If you want to take advantage of super chats while you can, then go ahead and do that. If you're listening to this after the fact, then make sure you leave your thoughts in the comments section below. I see Marco's in the chat now too. What's up, Marco? And, if you are over there on YouTube in any fashion, whether it's live or it's after the fact, then click on that like button. Double check that you are subscribed to this. That way, especially if you are live, then you can chat because you have to be subscribed to the channel to be able to chat it up. But then you've also got the join button, and you've got the patreon.com/smarkoutmoment stuff. It's all exactly the same. If you click on the join button here, or you go to Patreon, you'll get the Darkcast tier, you'll get to pick your Poison tier, so on and so forth. Redbubble and TeePublic, where you can pick up some merchandise, so keep that in mind too. If you want to pick stuff up like that, a whole lineup of t-shirts and hoodies and caps and mugs and coffee mugs and other mugs. I'm sure there's probably like 10 different types of mugs. But anything like that, you will find on the Smark Out Moment, Fanboys Anonymous, and a Mango Tees shops over there. And keep all that in mind as we're going along here. Show your support if you have spare change and everything. Let's see what Brandon says here. I thought the show was good, but nothing really blew me away. Nothing was bad either. I do think that there was a good portion of the show that was good, but I wouldn't necessarily call it memorable. And then there are a few things that definitely stood out as memorable to me. Do you think that there's anything, not necessarily like specifically say it right now, but when we come around to it, but is there anything that you can feel you'll end up putting down on your end of the year list as like one of the standout things from AEW in 2023?
Yes.
Is it the Texas Deathmatch?
Yes.
Okay, that's kind of where I'm leaning a little bit too.
It's confirmed a few things for me. It's confirmed that match is definitely very much in contention for match of the year, as we'll get to it. But it's also confirmed to me that I absolutely won't be going with MJF for Wrestler of the Year. In fact, I'm now in contention of putting him as Worst of the Year.
Wow. Not what I would anticipate.
Yeah, and it's weird because I ranked him earlier this year in our little thing where we did the ranking our favorite wrestlers of all time. He was really high up for me. Like, he's so far off that list now. It's like it's amazing how a few months can really sour you on somebody. And we'll get to that when we get to we'll get to it in the end of the kickoff show and then the main event stuff. But I have a lot of negative feelings towards how all of that was portrayed this evening.
You got a lot of grievances to air, and it's not even Festivus. The kickoff was, the 0 hour, as they call it, half hour worth of breaking down the card with Stokely Hathaway, Renee Paquette, and RJ City. Nothing new going on there, but the first match of the pre-show was Eddie Kingston retaining the ROH World Championship over Jay Lethal in a match that was pretty standard. I liked that Sanjay Dutt got a guitar shot to the head from Ortiz, but there's nothing that I really have to say about it. What about you?
Yeah, it was a fine enough match. Nothing blow away. Just solid professional wrestling, and Eddie Kingston retains. Yeah, you had Ortiz come out to help and just even the odds. So you get to wrap it up with, okay, Ortiz is back aligned with Eddie, so that's something. And there's no real hope that Jay Lethal was going to win. So yeah, fine for what it was, but nothing special.
Kingston would pop back up later on in the card. We'll talk about that later. The second match on the 0 Hour was Claudio Castagnoli against Buddy Matthews, something that had been mentioned as a potential match to add onto the card, and we were talking about that on the preview of the Pay-Per-Viewpoint, which was another solid match. Castagnoli wins with a submission with a sharpshooter, and for some reason after the match, he offered him a handshake, and Matthews shrugged him off, and then Claudio did the John Cena "you can't see me" taunt. Why?
I can't say with any real certainty, but there are some things that there's been some things on Twitter recently that have caused a little bit of this. It's basically, wrestlers liking other people's tweets that are shitting on the company. So there was one a couple of days ago that I saw of Matt Hardy liking a tweet which said that Tony Khan wasn't really booking. I'd say wasn't booking things properly, but basically saying that you need to, if you want to get audiences into the company, you need to focus on characters and gimmicks and stories. And Matt Hardy liked that rather than focus on the wrestling aspect of it. And then there was something today that I saw on Twitter. I don't know if it was actually happened today, but of somebody tweeted along the lines of CM Punk. It was some sort of gif about there's that gif of a guy that goes up to a shop window where there's a cat on the other side and says, "I'm going to get you out of there," to the cat on the other side of the window, even though it's just a cat that probably lives at that shop.
I don't think I know that gif offhand.
Okay,
maybe if I saw it, I might go "Oh yeah, I recognize that." But
well, essentially, they attached that to the idea of CM Punk's that was CM Punk to FTR, the House of Black, and Danhausen once he gets signed with WWE.
Oh, I like that. He would bring them over to WWE.
Yeah, and that was liked by Danhausen. So, or it was either Danhausen or Danhausen's wife that liked that. It was one or the other. But yeah, so maybe it is some sort of subtle indication of hey, see you in WWE soon or something along those lines, because maybe there is some issues with the House of Black. Maybe they're not super happy in AEW right now. There's always been those little inklings about Malakai Black not exactly being super fond of this situation, and now that Triple H is firmly in control of creative, maybe they are looking back over to say, no, he'd treat me all right over there, and I can go back to WWE and be with Selena and all that stuff. So and Buddy could be with Rhea and on the road as well. And
true, yeah, I forgot that they were a couple too.
Yeah, so maybe there is just that inkling that some of them will be going back. But yeah, other than that, rather than just hone in too much on that weird ending to it, so the match itself was again just a fun little sprint between two guys that can work really well. They have good chemistry. Claudio throwing Matthews around, Matthews using his array of kicks and high-speed offense to off-balance Claudio. But yeah, Claudio gets the victory as he should, and yeah, this was fun.
And then we had our third 0 Hour match, the ROH World Tag Team title match. Samoa Joe filling in as MJF's partner because Adam Cole, of course, continues to not be able to compete. We will certainly talk more about that on this show a little bit later. And they defeated the Guns, who came out dressed up like an old school white Shawn Michaels style gear, which I thought was pretty interesting. It looks pretty cool. But the match, the real story of the match is that Samoa Joe and MJF worked pretty well together, and they retained, or well, I guess MJF retained and Samoa Joe just helped him, but they shook hands after the match, and now that set up a title match down the line, only for MJF to be attacked by the Guns afterward. They worked on his leg with a steel chair. He got stretchered out, and he was promising or begging Adam Cole to make sure that they didn't take his title, as he kept saying it. And Adam Cole was ringside before that match. He had came down, caused a little bit of a distraction, and also that became one of the big stories for this pay-per-view was what's going on with MJF being outside of there, and how is he going to come back and have any kind of a championship defense along those lines. But match itself, fine match.
Yeah, match itself was pretty good. Like, the Guns have improved very, very much over the last 6 months or so. Pretty much, it was too early for them to win the tag team titles when they did win them. But ever since they've been part of Bullet Club Gold, they've enhanced themselves very significantly. And so, yeah, it was a fun match. And Joe and MJF did some cool things together. And Joe looks like looks leaner than he has done recently. Looks like he's moving a lot more easily than he has done since he's joined AEW. So I think he's found a new level of motivation, probably due to the fact that he's appearing on TV pretty much every week and is prominently featured. But it's
almost like they should have done that in WWE, huh?
But yeah, so they had have them retain, which was probably the right decision, with Adam Cole causing a distraction by coming down or hobbling down on his crutches. But yeah, the real story was the attack to the knee of MJF afterwards. And again, I'm struggling so much with this MJF babyface turn, or just the whole MJF babyface run, because it was totally fine with MJF this year when he was still, the heel, and he's had that great match with Danielson, and even though the build to the Double or Nothing Fatal 4-Way match was pretty rough in places, it wasn't MJF's fault. It was mostly the other guys not holding up their end of the bargain. But the match itself was great, but then ever since All In, it's been diminishing returns over and over again, and he's now really leaned into the whole, I have to do all the things that like Hogan or Austin would do. And it doesn't feel authentic to him. It just feels like, what does babyface do in this situation?
Playing the hits, but as a tribute band.
Yeah, exactly. I know when he was heel, people would always say that he would go for the low-hanging fruit. And that's kind of what made him... I think I've seen people describe it as, when he was a heel, he did a lot of cheap heat stuff because no one else was doing cheap heat, because cheap heat has a bad reputation attached to it. And so he was the only guy doing it. And so that got him super over. Now he's doing 80s babyface stuff, and no one else does that because it's old hat. But the idea being that because he's the only guy doing it, that makes him like interesting and unique. And as I say, I can't say the live crowds don't get into that stuff. But for me, it's just it's definitely a lot weaker than his heel work. He just doesn't feel authentic now, which was one of the big things about his character. Was he was a scumbag, but it felt like an authentic scumbag, and now he's being way, way, way too over the top with this babyface stuff. And this injury angle was just a means to, for him to later on in the night Hulk up and be the superhero that's the Superman. This was like Super Cena MJF.
And Mr. Monroe in the chat saying Joe fighting for MJF and not screwing him was great on the pre-show. Way to pull us in. Not having some kind of a twist there outside of the attack was a little bit of a surprise for me. I thought that maybe there would be something like, Joe didn't help him do the whole, like, he didn't come out and help MJF fight off the Guns or something. So I guess that's kind of what they're going for. But again, this story we're going to check back in on. But the first match of the actual main card, so to speak, even though I still maintain the idea that I don't know why there's a full hour worth of matches and they just call it the kickoff pre-show type thing. And there's also a half hour before that is functionally a pre-show. Like, why not just have the pay-per-view starts at 7, but whatever.
Well, the buy-in's supposed to, that's it, as it sounds, it's supposed to get people that were potentially on the fence about buying the show to buy the show.
I'm curious if that is something that they can track. If there's a level of buys that they have heading into that, and then they can see a significant enough tune-in rate of people that are watching that versus, okay, well, then we got this big surge. Or if it's just something that they just think is probably doing that and there's no metrics to track it. Of course, they're never going to tell us. Yeah, why would they? It's like Netflix never tells you any other information, so...
But I would say, before obviously we'll get to the first match now, but it was quite jarring. It would have been quite jarring for people that hadn't watched the buy-in and just came onto the show, because the first thing was just a long video package start, which AEW doesn't really do that often. The whole because they usually just get into the action straight away and just hey, we're here at Full Gear or All Out or whatever it is, and the first match is coming up right away. But in this one, you had a 3-minute hype package to the show, highlighting some of the big feuds, and then it was commentary talking for about 5 minutes about MJF getting injured. And then it moves into the first match. So it was a bit of a weird way to start. It was one of the weirdest starts to an AEW pay-per-view there has been.
Yeah, and I imagine if anybody didn't watch the pre-show, like you said, that would be even more jarring. And for people who did, then it's just sort of, okay, well, we're just continuing on with the rest of it. But nevertheless, that's how they did start that, other than going into the trios match between Sting, Darby Allin, and Adam Copeland with Ric Flair against Christian Cage, Luchasaurus, and Nick Wayne. Christian's group having a special entrance with a choir singing his, la 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 type of a theme, because he has no lyrics.
I like to think that they were all orphans. Or at least didn't have fathers.
Yeah, at least in kayfabe.
Sure, kayfabe.
Sure, kayfabe, right? I like that Copeland had the face paint, so all three of them had that going on. That was cool.
Yeah, this was a good party match to start off the show. And Sting just did a few hits here and there for the most part, maybe dived off one or two things. He had Ric Flair take a low blow, so at least he's doing stuff while he's there. So
took a low blow and a minute later was perfectly fine.
yeah. If he has to be there, then at least he gets hit in the nuts. So that's something. But yeah, there was a lot of fun spots. You had Darby Allin get chokeslammed onto the ring apron and showed no regard to his well-being ever, as per usual.
Yeah, that looked pretty gnarly.
Yeah, not the gnarliest thing we'll see on this show, but by a long stretch of the imagination. But yeah, it was just a lot of fun, and they kept holding back from having Edge and Christian get into any real contact with each other, which I think was good, because you want to save that for when they eventually have a singles match down the line. But yeah, you still had the baby faces get the victory by taking out the other members of the patriarchy, and basically everyone just piling on Luchasaurus after he'd gotten hit with the title belt, and then just everyone hits their finishers. It's all a fun time, and Edge gets the pin. So yeah, that's this was a fun way to open the show, to open the main show, should I say?
Yeah, it was there's not too much to it. Like, Cage running off, of course, means that we're gonna stretch that Copeland and Cage match a little bit further, but that was to be expected. So it's not like they're going to do the blow off to that here, and it just kind of fit really well, I think, as an opener, because there were a lot of other things that happened throughout the card that were more bombastic. So if they would have put this elsewhere, I think it would have fallen short. And they ended up having a thing afterward where Tony Schiavone had, Bryce Remsburg was the referee, I think at the time? Yeah. And he calls out Jay White, who gets all mad that the Guns music was playing instead. I'm not entirely sure why the Guns music was playing instead of Jay White's. Maybe it was just a regular snafu or something. But Schiavone says that MJF is injured and the match has been canceled. So by default, your new AEW World Champion. They're about to say that it's Jay White, but Adam Cole comes back out, interrupts, says that he's talked to Tony Khan, and if MJF can't defend the title, then he's going to do it for him, whether he's got just one leg or not. It's going to be MJF being replaced by Adam Cole against Jay White in the main event, which became one of the big stories to track throughout the night. This is like twist number 2 out of that whole thing. And I'm thinking to myself at the time, all right, well, they're doing something different that I was not anticipating. I guess Adam Cole is not as injured as we had thought, or he's going to just take a dive, or something weird's going to happen. But my least favorite scenario would be MJF just comes back in the ambulance. What were you thinking at the time that they announced this Cole thing?
I mean, my hope was that Cole was going to reveal himself as being against MJF and just lay down in the ring and let just White pin him. I mean, I don't know what I was kind of hoping for, because I just thought this whole thing was stupid anyway. So I was kind of just over it by this point. Just mainly due to the fact that the whole night was focused on, oh, this match has changed, and is MJF going to be okay? Is MJF okay? And how is Cole going to be able to defend this stuff? And it's like, you know, there's loads of other matches that are happening as well. Can you concentrate on those a little bit instead of just always having to go back to MJF? Because it seemed like every single match, the commentary was bringing it up at some point. Just like
very WWF. Or
yeah,
WWE. I wrote WWF on that one. I don't know why.
It seems a lot like the stuff that made you want to quit wrestling in the first place, when like everything was revolving around Steve Austin and The Rock and what they were doing.
Right.
This felt like an instance of that happening, where it's just like everything was focused around MJF.
I mean, the next match, they did a little update with MJF after that, but the next match was the International Championship. The going in their champion, Orange Cassidy, had something to prove against Jon Moxley. He had dropped the title to him originally before. And to my pleasure, after I think it was like 7 of the orange punches and of each break, he actually retained the title. And I like the match. I'm down to see a third match. We talked before about the idea of a rubber match, maybe at like World's End, maybe a no DQ gimmick in some fashion or something like that. But I digged it.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. They went on a bit more of a sprint approach than the previous one they had, which was their pay-per-view main event, so they went a bit more blockbuster with it. But this one started with Moxley just going on the attack, very aggressive, as he normally would do. But then Orange Cassidy comes straight back with the same level of aggression. He busts Moxley open. He's biting him on the face and the nose, and like scratching the back, and just going far more like extreme than he's ever done before in these types of situations. And yeah, just keeps punching him in the face over and over and over again. Moxley just is pretty resilient to those punches, because he just stays up for the most part. But eventually he wears him down so much to the point that Moxley just can't get back up. So that's perfect, because now you have Cassidy's proven to himself that he can beat Jon Moxley. That's beating like a guy who rarely loses in AEW. That Cassidy has that big scalp now. And it leads perfectly into, okay, Moxley underestimated him, or thought that he'd get him done quickly, and eventually Cassidy was able to take him out. And so now you're perfectly set up for, all right, one more match, some kind of stipulation, steel cage, I don't know, something of that ilk. I don't know what it would necessarily be, because we just had a Texas Death Match, so I don't want anything that's a bit more, that's too similar to that. But some kind of more violent stipulation that gets to have a definitive winner one way or the other.
Maybe like a 2 out of 3 falls could be a good enough way to do it. Or maybe you said like steel cage, but they definitely shouldn't just go with a straight up death match. They should figure out some other tweak to it.
Yeah. But however it ends up, I'm definitely down to the final match in the trilogy for now at World's End. And well, yeah, I say either way, I'd be happy with either of them walking away with the title after that. But this has definitely stoked the flame for a third and final encounter. So, but yeah, another really good match.
I'm a little bit surprised that Orange Cassidy won with a pretty definitive win, rather than catching him with like a pin or something like that, where it could be sort of like, you know, hey, you won, but I didn't win definitively enough, or, you know, something along those lines. But I mean, a win is a win, and it's 1-1. So all they have to do is say, "You got one, I got one. Let's settle it," and that's it. Yeah.
I think it was the best way to balance it out because Moxley's win over Orange Cassidy in their first match was pretty decisive. Like it's not like Cassidy rolled over, but it was very, very distinctive of him, Moxley just getting the definitive pin on him after like their long match. So this was a way for Cassidy to come out and say, "Okay, I'm taking this super seriously this time," and defeat Moxley in as definitive a manner means that now it's perfectly poised with they're both pretty much on equal footing going into hopefully the third match. Obviously, we don't know if that's even happening yet, but I'd imagine it would do.
So not only after this match did they announce that the Adam Cole thing was official, but they also announced that Mark Briscoe was going to be in the Continental Classic tournament. Another person that joins Bryan Danielson and Andrade. And we got a little bit more information about that later on, too. I don't anticipate that he is going to be winning this, but you never know.
Yeah, I'd say it's highly unlikely, but he's a good wrestler, so he'll have plenty of good matches against whoever he's in the same block with. So yeah, that's a nice addition.
See, Daniel in the chat here says, "Hey guys, didn't watch the show, but checked out the page on EWN. Not surprised about the announcement that came a little bit later on. Also sounds like the Texas Death match was too much. Not a big fan of super gory matches. I'm excited about the one title switch that happened, and we'll talk about that. Probably mentioned one specifically, but the next one wasn't the one that he was just talking about, but it was the AEW Women's World Championship match between Hikaru Shida and Toni Storm, and they had a few things in this match that didn't quite work as much as they had thought that it was going to, in my mind. And I said before, I was not interested in this match. I did end up watching it. I'd said I was like, I might not even just pay attention to it whatsoever. I did, but that's just because I try to, fucking do my job. And the in-ring stuff was fine, but I was just sort of waiting until something happened that would stand out to me. And the thing that first stood out to me is a stupid little thing, but I appreciated the pun when they had a whole thing with Shida's ankle buckling, and Toni Storm decided to do something that's not in her normal repertoire, which was an ankle lock. And I think it was Excalibur that had said that she is going off script. And I was like, that's a good little bit of pun. I like that. But they did some shoe stuff. Actually, like 2 times in this, they had the shoe thing going on. Kendo stick shots to Luther. And it turned into something that I hate when this stuff happens. Of course, you're going to have issues once in a while. It's a live show. But Storm puts something in her tights while Aubrey Edwards is distracted. And then it basically falls out of her tights. And it's very clear and obvious that there is this metal tray on her right butt cheek. And it is standing out in a way that there's no conceivable way that the referee would not notice this thing. Yet, a minute and a half, 2 minutes goes by or something with that sticking out. Storm has to readjust it or whatever, but you're just supposed to not pay attention to that. She, slams that into Shida. She ends up winning the title. Mariah May comes out, gives her flowers. They do a whole prolonged celebration thing that I just wasn't digging all that much. And I'm not too surprised in the slightest bit that the title switched hands. We were kind of expecting that was going to be the case. And I don't think I'm going to be surprised when Jamie Hayter wins it back eventually either.
Yeah, it was very obvious that Toni Storm was going to get the win back and claim the title. The match itself, it was one of those weird ones where there was but there was good action in there. There was the core of a good match happening around a load of timeless Tony bullshit that was taking it down a peg or two. I would say it was still pretty good for the most part, but I think that, as I say, the tray being super exposed and having to try and work around that, and the ending coming off quite flat because that just happened, and then the crowd just didn't seem to be expecting that to be the pinfall, and so when it did happen, there was just a bit of a okay, she won there then. And yeah, I'd say I can't be super excited about it because I'm not a huge fan of the Timeless Tony character. Hopefully, at least leads to some good stuff for Mariah May now that she's associated with the group. And yeah, that's all I can really say, really, because eventually she'll drop it to someone. Hopefully, as like Jamie Hayter down the road. There are other options out there that Tony Storm can easily feud with, but yeah, this was a bit of like the roller coaster moment where there's a lot of good wrestling and like what I would call proper AEW stuff on this show, and then there's the sports entertainment stuff, which makes it go in a bit of a up and down pattern. And this was far more leaning into the sports entertainment side of things.
Not my like biggest down point of the show, but it was definitely one of them. And yeah, there's a suspension of disbelief that goes in a lot of things in pro wrestling. This is just one of those instances, but yeah, still a thumbs down on that end. And overall, I really don't care about the Timeless Tony Storm character. So when the big like, oh wow, we're going forward with this particular thing isn't something that I'm super into, it's hard to get like, we got a big switch over. Now the next things are going to be so great. So we're going to see a lot of the same, and I'm not going to pay too much attention to it, to be perfectly honest. I don't watch those little silent films. I don't find them fun, and they're probably going to double down on it and do even more, which, boo. Eddie Kingston then had a little backstage segment where he said that he is going to put on the line both the ROH World Championship and the New Japan Strong Openweight Championship in every match that he has in the Continental Classic tournament. And he also said something that I was just like, huh? And he's like, because he wants the winner of this tournament to be a Triple Crown champion by also winning the Continental Championship. We're getting another mid-card title?
Well, it's hard to really tell because they haven't said explicitly one way or the other, because it could be, they've said it's going to be a championship, but there are championships like the Owen Hart Championship, which is just won and then never seen until the next tournament happens. So it could be a fully fledged title, or it could just be an award you get for winning this tournament overall. So we'll have to wait and see on that front, or for them to explain it explicitly to us. But yeah, it could be a case that there is some kind of Triple Crown thing and they're introducing another title, which would be another title too many. But we'll have to wait and see, because they haven't been fully clear on what this tournament. Well, we don't know who is still all the competitors that are in the tournament, and we don't know what the actual stipulations or the consequences of the tournament are.
It is weird to me though, because this threw a huge wrench into it, because I was not anticipating that these two titles would have to be in contention for this. And if he's putting that on the line in every match that he's in, kind of implies to me that he is going to be in the finals, unless they are planning on doing... Well, World's End happens after Final Battle. So maybe their game plan is that Kingston is going to lose the ROH World Championship at Final Battle, and it'll be a Continental Classic match at the same time, and he'll also be losing the Strong Openweight Championship. So you're talking 3 companies that need to coincide with who is going to be winning this tournament. And I immediately just go, okay, well then all the more reason that it's not going to be a Mark Briscoe, and that it's not going to be an Andrade. And I highly doubt that it would be a Bryan Danielson, because he's going to really have 2 at least, if not 3 championships that are dependent upon him, when he's said many times before that he does not want the responsibility of being a champion. I don't know. That kind of takes a little bit of it out to me, to be honest.
I think it's interesting. I think it has made me pretty convinced that Danielson's winning now, that announcement. Because, yeah, of course, it would be easy for him to hold those titles because it makes him Ring of Honor World Champion, which is like a nice roundabout way for his final year to be Ring of Honor World Champion, which is kind of like his starting point, or at least the point in his career which he made his name in. So him holding that title and then either defending it in a couple of times or passing the torch to whoever will be next to hold that title makes a lot of sense. The New Japan Strong one is easy enough. He could just lose it to Okada at Wrestle Kingdom. Just make it a New Japan Strong title match if he wins it, because it'll be a World's End that the tournament final happens. So that's before Wrestle Kingdom, and then the Continental title. Well, yeah, you just hold it until he loses it. It's like, I think that the way they're going to try and get around this is essentially to make sure that Kingston doesn't necessarily have to make it all the way to the finals. Is Kingston is just going to hold up the titles and just say, well, the way that he explained it is that the winner of the tournament wins the titles. So he'll just go with the approach of the guy that beats him isn't the guy that wins the titles. Whoever wins the tournament wins the titles.
I think it might be in that kind of way. Like, if somebody does pin him, they don't necessarily win the belts right then and there. That it'll be, I have to not win the final. Yeah, if I'm in the final, then it's a championship match. If I'm not in the final, it's a championship match with or without me, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so essentially, he's basically said that the tournament is to win the title. So if he doesn't advance to the final, then he's no longer the champion, and then you're fighting for the vacant titles.
I wonder why they're doing this and the whole vacated television title thing. Are they just like cleaning shop around or something? Or I really hope though that there's like a true game plan in mind, and it's not just something that they're putting out there to be like, that would be a little bit more interesting and we'll figure it out.
I presume they have something in mind. I would like to think that they at least have an idea about it, but this announced tournament did kind of come out of nowhere, and it feels like a Danielson pet project. So hopefully they have something in mind of who's going to be winning all those titles and how they're going to deal with that person holding all three of those titles.
Well, there's one person that's not going to be most likely involved in there that we will talk about later that I was sort of anticipating, so we'll come back to that again. We had a 4-way ladder match for the AEW World Tag Team Championship. Big Bill and Ricky Starks retained over Dralistico and Rush, Cash Wheeler and Dax Harwood, and Malakai Black and Brody King, which it was a good match that went a little too long for me.
I thought that it might have gone like a little bit long, but this match was just so like crazy that I kind of just couldn't help but just enjoy every second of it, because there's been a lot of these tag title ladder matches. They've done quite a few, both across Ring of Honor and AEW, with like multi teams involved. But there's a few of them that went as like batshit crazy to the point where I thought that one, if not more, people would get seriously injured due to some of the spots in this match. And I thought that like some people shined pretty well. I thought Dralistico, that was his best performance in AEW for me so far. Like, he really stood out completely from start to finish. Brody King continues to outshine Malakai Black to me as the guy that is the main focus point of the House of Black, or at least from the male side of things. FTR did more than I expected, considering the fact it's a ladder match and that's not really their forte, and the champs retained, which was what I was expecting as well. I do like that, like, neat chants are now an AEW staple. Like as soon as two big guys get in the ring, they're going, okay, now it's time to bring out the meat chants.
It's weird that it's a Big E thing, though.
It's a Hobbs and, well, I know it's the big meaty men slapping meat thing, but it was the Hobbs and Miro match that's got this ball rolling, and now essentially big guy versus big guy. if they start hitting each other, we shout
meat.
Yeah. And but there was a lot of fun moments in this match, a lot of dangerous stuff, but seemingly everyone came out reasonably unscathed. Hopefully Dralistico did as well, because he took that Brody King pile driver onto that ladder bridge, and he's supposed to be wrestling for the AAA Mega Championship tomorrow, so hopefully he's not too banged up for it. But yeah, that's like a lot of fun, and the right result, the champion's retaining, at least in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally fine with that. I thought that if FTR would have won, it would have been fine. In the grand scheme, it kind of depends on where they were going next for the tag title opportunity and, other future matches that they want to do. And Bill and Starks, cool, fine with it. There was a title change, though, in the next match. That was the one that Daniel was mentioning earlier. The three-way for the AEW TBS Championship. Kris Statlander going in as the champion against Skye Blue, who stomped on her baseball cap and put on a crown during her entrance, and Julia Hart, who, lip-synced her entrance and had her normal witchy stuff going on. And the match itself, I got almost nothing to say about it. I thought it was fine. Statlander was like the powerhouse, and all three were having some good stuff here and there. The crowd seemed to be into it and all. The Code Blue transition was pretty cool. I like that. And it ultimately ends up being Statlander hits the Saturday Night Fever on Blue, and Hart clothesline Stat. So she gets to cover Skye Blue, and she wins the title, which we were talking about in the Pay-Per-Viewpoint predictions, that we were like, this belt's probably going to change hands too, and it seems like it's going to be to Julia Hart. So yay us for guessing that.
I thought this match seriously over-delivered, especially considering the fact that you put it on after that really hectic, all over the place ladder match, and you're putting them in a bit of a death slot to try and see if they can bring the crowd back up, and they managed to do it, because I thought the match was actually really good. There was some clunkiness in there, but I think that kind of added to it rather than taking away from the match, because they were just getting like heavily, I'd say more violent, but at least more aggressive, and sometimes when it goes a little bit more clunkier or a bit more unscripted, it can make things look a bit better. But it started off with Hart and Blue double teaming Statlander, but Statlander was outpowering them and taking care of it, and eventually Blue and Hart start going at each other as well once they've dealt with Statlander for a bit. I think the whole story of the match is that Statlander, if it was one-on-one, either Statlander against Hart or Statlander against Skye Blue, she would have won pretty comprehensively, because the whole story was she was throwing them around at every opportunity. But the fact that there was two of them to deal with, and they were both buzzing around her at all times and breaking up pinfalls, it just meant that she couldn't get one down for long enough to pin it before someone else was interfering. So yeah, but I thought Statlander was really great. She started going to like Suplex City with loads of German suplexes and deadlift German suplexes to both women, which was really fun. And Julia Hart does steal the victory, as you said. So yeah, I think this is a good move for the TBS Championship. Statlander has proven to be a very worthy champion and can definitely take the step up towards the World Championship level. And Julia Hart is a nice character and someone who is definitely on the rise, both in the ring and just from a pure star power perspective. So it feels like a good choice to be like a young face for the TBS Championship moving forward. It'd be interesting to see who her upcoming feuds will be against, whether Skye Blue will continue down that path, whether it's Nightingale and some other names and faces that could challenge for that title. But yeah, I thought overall this was a really good match, especially considering the placement of it, and they did a really good job of getting the crowd invested in the title change.
Definitely gets a seal approval from Frankie here in the chat. Says Julia Hart's freaking great. She improves so much, and it's noticeable. Fun three-way match. And also putting out there, coming in late, but overall really enjoyed this show. Hopefully this is the start of AEW getting back on track. And Jesus, that Texas Death Match, which is going to be the 2 segments from now what we talk about. But before that was the big contract signing. And that was Will Ospreay. Not the biggest shock. We had talked about him as one of the main potentials and somebody that the only real question was, I mean, he's not done with New Japan, so how's that going to work out? And he addressed that. He actually said he wants to finish things out with New Japan because he had been there for 8 years. So he is going to hope that everybody's patient with him. He's going to do that, and then he's going to be on the road to Revolution because everything, around like February or so ends up being like that. In the meantime, get your shit ready because he's going to be really like focusing on Wembley. And that's, all you could really put out there for the most part. Like, they didn't need to do any kind of a big angle. They didn't need to have this Don Callis thing involved in that. And people were able to just celebrate. And Will Ospreay going there is not at all shocking to me. I thought that there was almost no chance that he was going to be popping up in WWE.
No, but there probably was a minimal chance, but there always was a chance until it's confirmed that he's in AEW, and so I'm very happy that he has made the choice to go to AEW in the first place. So that's good to see. He is, at least in my opinion, many other people's opinion, I'm sure as well, the best wrestler in the world, and so it's good to have the best wrestler in the world in a company that I think will utilize that. His ability far better than WWE would do, just because, again, not to shit on it, they have a load of great wrestlers and they do have great matches, but I feel like it's there's such a set style in WWE that I think that would restrict him in the long run, whereas he's going to have more freedom to do what he would typically do in AEW. So I'm looking forward to seeing him wrestle week in, week out against some of the talent that AEW has to offer. It's a shame that he can't be part of the Continental Classic.
Yeah.
But he is, he's loyal to New Japan. He's still employed by New Japan presumably up until Wrestle Kingdom, when he'll have his final match. And and because he's going to be part of AEW, it means that he'll still probably have opportunities to go back to New Japan if he ever so wishes to. So,
yeah, it's not set in stone that he needs to drop his title at Wrestle Kingdom. They've had plenty other people that are, Eddie Kingston's a New Japan Strong Openweight champion right now. Like, they could do.
Moxley's in that match as well,
right? Yeah,
AEW as well. So so it doesn't necessarily say that he's going to lose that match and not win the title. He almost certainly will, but it's more just to the fact that he gets to be. He's a permanent part of being All Elite now, and he's now essentially he'll be an AEW guy that occasionally goes to New Japan rather than a New Japan guy that occasionally goes to AEW.
Right, and that's, I'm sure, if there's something in New Japan that tickles his fancy, rather than just that's the company I work for, so they want me to fight this guy and I've already fought him 6 times or something like that. It'll be like a special attraction.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, Forbidden Door will be the main case for that, but he might appear in like some Wrestle Kingdom matches moving forward if the opponent is right.
You think he's winning that belt in Wembley?
Or the world title?
Mm-hmm.
I would hope so.
I think there's a good chance. Of course, we have no idea who's going to be even champion around that time, so we'll come back around to that in August. Let's talk about that. Actually, before we talk about the next match, let's talk in the chat. Brandon saying, I was really hoping for Mercedes, missing her wrestle, but Ospreay is great, so I can't be mad. And Daniel saying Mercedes will be next year when she's healthy. Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty inevitable that she's going to go there, and it's just a matter of time.
I don't think it's as inevitable now.
No?
No, I think that there's a very good chance she ends up back in WWE.
Now that it's more Hunter in charge?
Hunter's in charge, and especially if Bayley's about to turn babyface, and she might need help going up against Damage Control.
Wouldn't mind it. You have to see. But let's talk about that Texas Death match. Hangman Adam Page against Swerve Strickland. This match was brutal, and there are so many things that happen in here that I'm sure we would forget to mention things, but the first one that I had written down as just like, ouch, okay, we're doing this now, was the staples to the face of Swerve. And then after Page rips the finger painting off Swerve's face, he just goes underneath Strickland and he drinks his blood.
Yep, he took after like busting him open pretty badly with all the staples and all the other stuff that he was doing. And Swerve was bleeding so much in this match as well. It was ridiculous how much.
I'm surprised they didn't stop it.
But then, like, he was drinking the blood and then spitting out like the Triple H water spit. Is just like this dude is the current like king of death matches. I don't care your Nick Gage's, your John Moxley's, all the other stuff. It's like it's actually Adam Page, and it just escalated from there. There was just so much brutality in this match, like the barbed wire wrapped steel chair and just using barbed wire wrapping around the faces. The match started with a buckshot lariat. That was basically the first thing that happened in this match, was him taking him out like that. There was a pile driver on the barricade, dropping him on the ring apron on top of a cinder block. And
the Death Valley driver. Yeah,
it's just like it just got like the barbed wire table that got broken through, and like dropping him with a dead eye on top of the barbed wire, and the double
glass
stuff on
it was the bag of tacks turns out it's a bunch of glass, and Swerve jumps on top of him, and the barbed wire getting caught in Page's
face,
the face for that, and it kept going with that. There's moves like the buckshot barbed wire lariat and all, which it looks tame in comparison to some of the other things they had done. And then Prince Nana gets a dead eye off the ring apron through a table, and Brian Cage comes out and he gets attacked and fought back. Page fights back with him and hits him with the barbed wire and all. The cinder block goes to the back of the head of Page. That's not even enough. It ends up with Swerve beating Page by hanging him through a chain that was looped in through the ring post, which was just like, God damn, man, you lost me already at the Swerve stapling himself and smiling. I'm like, no, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do any of that. And they just kept going and going and going. Highlight of the night for me.
Yeah, this is weird because like it's competing now with me for match of the year with the other Texas Death match that happened this year between Moxley and Hangman Page, which was also like fucking great. This is I don't know why you have this guy Page who is so unbelievably great, and he wasn't doing pretty much anything for like half the year, or was just so heavily involved in the elite stuff that it just kept him away from singles competition for most of the year. And then he can just come out and just start doing this. Like, why isn't this guy the centerpiece of your entire company? He's clearly can elicit responses and create matches like this that nobody else can do. But they have Swerve get the victory, and he's now beaten Page twice in a row on pay-per-view. And this one was, again, there was interference still, so there's always that little seed of doubt in there. But it's a definitive win because he choked him out, and he made it so that Page couldn't answer the count of 10. He's the first person to ever beat Page in a Texas Death match. They're really going with Swerve. Like, this is the clearest indication that he's a main event guy, and he's a guy that you could realistically put the world title on. So,
or the Continental Classic.
Yeah, absolutely as well. So if you want him to just be the guy that gets that victory, make him Ring of Honor World Champion and New Japan Strong World Champion and this new Continental Champion all at once, then that'd be a big seal of approval as well. Yeah, I don't know where necessarily they are going with him straight away, but it's clear that, I think with this result, it's clear that this isn't just a one and done thing, or at least I hope that it's not a one and done thing, and this is definitively, we're pushing this guy will be world champion one day, maybe sometime even next year. So yeah, I'm pleased that Page put him over. I wasn't expecting it to happen. I assumed they would have some kind of rubber match or something would happen, but yeah, an interesting result in the end of an absolute spectacle of a match that was just crazy from start to finish.
Daniel in the chat tossing out, I could enjoy an MJF versus Swerve match at Revolution. I don't know if MJF is still going to be champion at that point. Come back around to that. I can't imagine that was greenlit backstage. That was probably all on the fly decision. That's a strong health concern about drinking the blood and all. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how they sign off on that stuff. That's kind of crazy. But also, thank you to Ashton for the comment. Appreciate everything y'all do. I've been learning so much. Thank you very much. Definitely a highlight. It's on my match of the year list as a potential. I don't think I'm going to end up picking that for my best match of the year at the end of the year awards when we do that in a few weeks, but it's something that at least I'm going to be bringing up again for sure. Definitely not going to be saying that about the Golden Jets versus the Young Bucks. I honestly missed the first half of this. I was in the other room. I was listening to it, was taking care of some other stuff. And I was just like, I don't feel like I'm missing anything. And then the latter half of it that I saw, it was fine. They did, some teasing of stuff like Omega teasing that he was going to hit the V trigger on Jericho, and he just hits like Matt Jackson anyway. And I think it was Matt Jackson had done the one-winged angel to Omega just to, be a little cheeky bastard. And one-winged angel from Omega gets the win, and the Young Bucks throw a tantrum ringside.
Yeah, I thought that. This was another one where you just like they were put in a difficult situation of having to follow that Texas Death Match, and the crowd was clearly quite quiet at the start of it, but for the second time they managed to get the crowd back into it because you put Kenny Omega and partner against the Young Bucks, and you're going to have a really, really good match. I think this was probably the weakest of the Omega series against the Young Bucks that I've seen. It certainly wasn't better than Omega and Ibushi versus that from New Japan all those years ago, and it wasn't better than Omega and Page versus the Young Bucks, but it was still a lot of fun. Jericho held up his end of the bargain. The dual low blows to both Jericho and Omega was just signaling the Young Bucks' frustration and definitely turning heel, but Jericho and Omega return the favourite in certain instances. I thought it was quite interesting. They teased the Omega hitting the V trigger on Jericho at one point rather than on Nick Jackson, but Omega did just actually hit it on Jackson instead. So maybe that was just a little way of like doing a quick little swerve just to get the crowd a bit more interested before the end result. Omega pins, I think it was Matt with the one-winged angel, and yeah, they're going to get a tag team title shot against Starks and Big Bill at some point. So look forward to that. And yeah, the Bucks are clearly turning. I don't know if they're clearly turning heel, but they're clearly leaning towards that direction. So whether it's a thing where they get to the brink and then they're eventually brought back to seeing the more rational side of things, or whether it does just go into a full-blown heel turn and maybe they end up siding back up with Don Callis, I mean, who knows? I think it's unlikely, but maybe it's just more fractures in the Elite soon after they've come back together. But yeah, I thought it was a really good match, and the fact they managed to get the crowd back again after like two really, really violent and weapons-filled matches had taken place earlier in the night, I thought that was again really impressive.
Brandon and Chad saying Young Bucks are so corny to me. I kind of agree. I don't really dig the meta stuff as much as they really like doing, and sometimes it can be really fun, but a lot of times to me it kind of takes me out of the segments. Is that something that ever kind of happens with you?
No, they're the best tag team in the world, alongside FTR. So
disagree fully on Callum's end, but yeah, I see a lot of people that have that sentiment. Young Bucks are kind of like idols of that style, so that's one of the reasons why they get their criticism too. But yeah, everybody's to each their own.
There was the Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame announcements recently, and the Young Bucks were nominated and they didn't make it into it, and I was flabbergasted that they didn't make it into the Hall of Fame for it. It's just because as I say, you can absolutely love the meta stuff or hate the meta stuff, but you can't really deny the fact that they are a influential tag team in history.
Oh yeah.
So it was just like, it was odd to me that there was, as I can't say that the people that did get into the Hall of Fame didn't deserve it. I think Sergeant Slaughter was one of the people that made it into the Hall of Fame this year. Well, that Hall of Fame in particular. So, But it was just but yeah, it just feels odd to me that like there's still some people that are holding back on just saying that, you know, these people put 10,000 people in a building for it all in back in 2018, and they're at the heart of why AEW exists in the first place. So yeah, it's odd, but yeah, again, it was another great tag team performance for them, but they're not going to get a tag team title match going forward. So
then we had our main event: Adam Cole against Jay White. Surprise, surprise! MJF comes out on the in the ambulance driving, and you know he's like, "I can do it," and it's just MJF versus Jay White, and then they just have a match, and I'm like, okay, well, and it wasn't like bad by any means, but it sucked the air out of it for me, and became a story of this guy's bad enough that he got stretchered out, and he spent the entire pay-per-view away, and then he magically comes back in time, of course. And the more interesting scenario to me was something happening with Cole after they presented that. So then for it to just come back around to, never mind, we're doing the MJF thing, and he retains. I don't know. I felt a little blah about it.
Yeah, I think that, and I've already said that I was very down on this in particular. It's one of those things that MJF's done it to make him look. I say like he's done it. Like they've booked it to try and make MJF look like this conquering babyface that went through all this adversity and still managed to get the victory from a really tough opponent. But what in reality it's done is Jay White has failed to be a guy that's wrestling on one leg. And even if he hadn't been pinned or made to submit throughout the entire thing, Jay White now needs a lot of rehab if he ever wants to get back into world title contention ever again. Like this is, yeah, I don't want to say it's like a burial because that word gets overplayed, but it's definitely a real hit to Jay White's credibility. That he had his minions take out MJF's leg, he was limping throughout the entire thing, and he still couldn't get the job done against him, despite using having the guns continue to interfere, and Cole couldn't do anything really from the outside because he was limping around on his crutches and was using the diamond ring and using any other ways to cheat to try and get the advantage, and MJF just kicking out of everything and then eventually hitting him with the ring and getting the victory. I mean, there was cool stuff in this match. It was the funniest thing. It kind of was the real semblance for me of how I was feeling towards this match when he puts Jay White onto the announce table and the announce table just collapses.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh yeah, this is just what this match needs. But then MJF decides, okay, if the table's going to collapse, I'm just going to go fucking crazy then and actually just hit the elbow drop onto the floor, which must be way more painful than going through the announce table.
Yeah, it's got to be way worse because you have no give anymore. You're just falling a higher height and smack it into the floor.
And then one of the coolest spots of the entire night was the cutter to the outside. Him just leaping over the top rope, catching Jay White and just delivering a cutter onto the floor. That was crazy. Obviously, probably the 30th craziest spot in the entire night, but still, for a straight up singles match, that's pretty wild. But I thought that, yeah, I'd say the match in a vacuum was totally fine. But it went on way too long. It was just meandering too much. It felt like it was at times just going through treacle, and a lot of Jay White matches can be like that. So I'm not holding MJF wholly responsible for the way that match laid out. Jay White can have pretty boring matches in main events because of the style that he works. But I thought that it was just a really kind of damp squib way to end this show. And yeah, I thought that it was way too the corny babyface stuff, the punches in the corner, the kangaroo kicks and all this other bullshit is just, it's so 80s hokiness that I can't really get on board with it anymore. Just even after him getting the victory, and did you watch him him going up to the ramp, and then he was sitting on stage with Adam Cole next to him and just saying like this is professional wrestling and I am champion and the greatest professional wrestler, and I think he said something like "fuck something" or other. I can't remember what he necessarily said.
I couldn't hear what he said for that. Yeah.
He recently did like a interview for that. I don't know if you've ever seen it. This I think it's Bo Hightower. He's the like a chiropractor guy that does chiropractic work on a lot of wrestlers and interviews them while he does it.
I don't think I've seen that. Unless is that the guy that did he's got like a little hand tool thing and he was smacking like the neck of Bobby Lashley. Is that guy?
Yeah, I think he's done it with Bobby Lashley before.
I've seen that one then.
It's like he's chiseling their neck or whatever.
Yeah. Okay, so I did see that one.
Yeah, so he was doing that. So MJF did that a couple of days ago, and I think at one point he talks about how, in a way, it's somewhat correct about talking about like the marks on the internet don't know what they're talking about in terms of wrestling, and they'll always just talk about how great matches are, but it should be more about like characters and gimmicks and all that other stuff. And as I say, your mileage may vary on whether you believe that or not, but it's very, very. It sounds like what a WWE superstar would say. And the more and more I watch MJF in this particular iteration of his character, the more I start thinking that I wish he'd signed with WWE.
I'm still hoping that he does. I don't think he will, but I am definitely still hoping that he does, because I just overall think that is something he needs to do. And yeah, obviously we can't speak for him, but...
I mean, this main event felt Bloodline, right? This was a Bloodline main event.
Yeah, I can see that.
Because there was the ref bump, tons of interference, like screwishness all over the thing, loads of like high jeopardy near falls. This was a good. I'd say the match itself was good, so it was a good version of a Bloodline match, but it was a Bloodline match. And so he's just doing Bloodline stuff, and I'd say it's not necessarily. I'm not saying that the Bloodline stuff is all bad, but if I want to watch the Bloodline stuff, I'll watch WWE. I'm watching AEW, so I want something different.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's too WWE right now, and that's people would think like that's maybe a criticism. Of course, I like AEW more than WWE, but that's not necessarily saying that WWE is bad, but WWE is WWE. I don't want AEW to be WWE as well, or WWE Light. So you want something different, and it's just adding to the point where I need him to lose that title now. It's been too long. He's held it for a year now, and by every metric, like he would disagree because he thinks that what he's doing is great. And if you listen to him in any interviews, he thinks that he's the most over guy in the entire company and the most over guy in wrestling right now. But by every real metric of how the company has been going, his reign as world champion has been probably the least successful in the company's history. They've got less fans now watching on a weekly basis than they did before. Their attendances are way worse than they have ever been. Like by every actual metric of whether he's a draw or not, he's an absolute flop as champion. And they probably should take this as a sign that in order to get back to where they were, they need to revert back to the ethos they used to have, which is clearly not apparent right now with your timeless Tonys and your kangaroo kicks.
I know that there's already criticism out there that there wasn't any more reveal of the devil character either.
No, and was completely ignored.
There wasn't any tease. There wasn't anything that happened in here. I thought that there was maybe a chance that Adam Cole would turn on him and it would be something like that, or that they would set up something where like the celebration at the end would end up having like MJF gets attacked by the devil character, and that's the big thing to end, but it just ended. And now I don't know where they're going with a Worlds Collide, because there was a World's End, because there was a moment with the whole Cole thing where I was thinking, hey, if Cole can go, Cole could win, and then it could be a story of technically I should be champion right now because I did win that match, so you owe me a rematch. And then once the MJF and Samoa Joe match happens on something like Winter is Coming, then it becomes, okay, well, it's Adam Cole versus MJF at World's End. And since he didn't do anything, I got to assume that he's still just too injured to be able to do that, and that they are just going to do something else. And I don't know. I didn't necessarily want Jay White to win the belt here, but I did want something to push that forward. And I don't think that the fake injury angle is what is going to propel that.
Yeah, I think that obviously with the World's End taking place at in Long Island, or at least in New York, it's the ideal place for MJF to go in as world champion. So I was never under any real assumption that Jay White was going to win, even with the injury angle. So I think that, but it seems like a good place for the run to finally end. We don't know who his opponent is going to be. We know he's going to be fighting Samoa Joe for the title at some point due to the agreement of him helping him retain the Ring of Honor tag titles. We know that Wardlow has been chasing him down for the title, or at least like chased him down personally to get revenge on him. Obviously, there are some other big names that could battle him for the title at any point in time. We just had Swerve get a huge victory, so Swerve could be a opponent for him at World's End instead if they don't decide to put him in the Continental Classic. So we have to kind of wait and see, but I think the reign itself has kind of overstayed its welcome, and the transition from him into being a very like doe-eyed quintessential babyface just hasn't he's lost too much of what made him before. Like, too much of his old identity has kind of just gone by the wayside, and he's just playing the babyface hits. So if he was more still like who he is, like super arrogant, super over the top, because a lot of his character now is so plagued with doubt or so much more focused on like who his friends are rather than being champion. I think that he needs to rediscover who he is. And in order to do that, I think it needs to start with him losing the belt. So
lose the belt, then go to WWE.
I mean, at this point, he's already said it. I think they said in the he was on the press conference with Tony Khan. Was basically said as long as Tony Khan pays him a ton of money, he's not leaving AEW. So
yeah, I'm still anticipating he's either re-signed already or he's going to re-sign. I can't picture that he's heading out to WWE quite yet.
And as I say, like, even though I'm really down on the character right now, and I think that his influence is a lot of the reason why AEW has been meandering for the last 6 to 8 months or so, I think that I still would want him to stay because I know how good he can be when he's got the right material and he's got the right attitude towards things. But yeah, for right now, it's not really working for me. So hopefully he does drop the belt to someone, and we go in a slightly different direction moving forward.
And then that is it for AEW Full Gear 2023. Nothing else going on because that was the end of the night. But the the future that comes out of this is going to be things that we break down over the course of the next few weeks and everything leading up to the next big event, World's End. We do have episodes of Dynamite, Collision, and Rampage in the meantime, where who knows what'll end up happening and how the whole landscape can change in that front. But we got 2 new champions, and we got some twists and turns and some new revelations, and then some things that we still need to really start getting into some more information about. So AEW's got some interesting stuff on the future, I'm sure. And at least for now, overall, I thought it was a good pay-per-view.
Yeah, I'd give it a solid 7, between a 7 and 8 out of 10, probably. Maybe 7.5, then it's probably the right one to do it. I think that there was some really, really great stuff on this show, but I think that the incorporation of a lot of like the Timeless Tony and the whole through line of the MJF stuff on this show lost me in places, but overall it was an enjoyable few hours of wrestling.
Sometimes it's all you can ask for, but I hope that you have asked for and received a good post show here. If you did, make sure you hit the like button on here. That way you let us know. Also leave a comment. Let us know that way. Help us out on the monetary side of things if you want to show your support in that front. And make sure that you are going and liking and sharing and following all the different things you can find outside of that stuff. You got fanboysanonymous.com for the Blue Brand content. Everything on the geek culture spectrum outside of pro wrestling is where you'll find that stuff there. If you go to amangotree.com, you will see the full link tree list of all sorts of different accounts, including my stuff at Tony Mango. Make sure you are following Callum.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Wigmeister14. You can check out the power rankings every single Saturday. So the most recent one has come out. So you can check that out to see who's top of the rankings for WWE based on the last week's performances. And then you can also check out the Fantasy League, where all the points have been updated for the past week as well. So you can see who picked up the most points this week, who's doing particularly well as we head towards the next pit stop of Survivor Series on the road to WrestleMania and crowning the winner of this year's Fantasy League tournament. So check that out.
Alrighty, everybody, that's it. We want to thank you, of course, for tuning in. Thank you for the live chats. Thank you, Michael, in the chat too as well. And popped up in here saying about wouldn't be shocked if the reveal of the devil is on Wednesday. Just weird that there was no sign of them. Daniel saying, talk to y'all next week for Survivor Series. Yeah, that's right. It is next week. Goddamn, man. You're going to be on Raw this week. Can give you any information you might need from the show. Definitely fill us in if anything happens on there, and make sure you have fun. That's something that if you go to any kind of a show, you're likely to have more fun unless and end up having a really garbage show. But maybe you're going to get a whole new return of somebody this week. That's something that's been teased. Could be cool. Yeah, adios for now, everybody. We will see you next time. We will get into the Survivor Series Pay-Per-Viewpoint content next week. We are trying to record some stuff in advance as well for a week that I'm not going to be around. And then we're going to, be next thing, it's December. So we're not too far off from the end of the year awards, which is very scary to think that that's another year gone. But nevertheless, it is. And so is this. So we'll see you next time, everyone. This has been another Smark Out moment. And we are being counted out.